Marjaana can do incredible 4 and 5 hour rides, but she's a maniac.
How did you manage those long rides? I mean, you did 4 and 5 hour rides?
Even 6.5. Just finished CISO, mental strength. It's a mystery. It's the willpower, I guess.
Welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast. Each week, renowned sports scientist and founder of Athletica AI, Dr. Paul Laursen, athlete, coach, and sports scientist Marjaana Rakai, and coach and cyclist Paul Warloski discuss training, racing, and improving your health and fitness. Get ready for your journey to peak performance. Hello and welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast, where we navigate training, fitness, and health for everyday athletes. Today, we are listening to a bunch of questions from our listeners and our riders and our athletes, and we want to help you try to figure out what is going on with your training. So if you have questions, please ask us. So the first one comes from Peter Jan Verrika from Belgium. I want to train for an ultra trail run in 2025. Instead of recovery or low impact sessions on the bike, I would like to combine the running sessions with rowing sessions. In the general preparation phase, should I do HIIT sessions on the rowing machine and endurance sessions on the runs? Can I combine running and rowing in Athletica for a trail running goal? There's a lot there, Paul.
Yeah, but it's actually a really good question, and I'll give you my 2 cents. So basically what Peter Jan's asking is, like, how can I sort of supplement alternate exercise mode sessions to really almost target different areas of the body to optimize performance. And I do this actually a lot with one of the phenom young runners that I train here in Revelstoke. What we do, we've kind of come up to the realization that too much HIIT work is, it can be really risky. There's an old adage in coaching with running is that speed kills. And it's because it's just, you really, like, it's all about intensity control, right? Where we hear that about in the Norwegian method. And when you do HIIT using different exercise modes, such as cycling or such as rowing, they're less damaging from the eccentric phase. So that's the muscle lengthening phase. That's like, remember that when you're running, you're actually doing like hops. You're actually like hopping repeatedly all the time. So just imagine, you're always like just stand on your floor or outside and just hop, hop, hop. You'll you very soon realize that these are, eccentric, damaging contractions. So when you are, doing HIIT work and sprinting, they're quite taxing. So if we can deload that area, but still work on other areas of the body, like the central circulation, the heart and the lungs, we can still maximize our physiology, right? The delivery aspect of the, of what we know is needed, right? So we can still work on the lungs, the heart, the transfer of that to the muscles, but have it being less risky. So Peter Jan, your idea is excellent, and you can certainly swap up the HIIT running sessions with rowing sessions or cycling sessions or swimming sessions. So all are excellent alternatives because you're still going to be expanding the cardiac output, the central circulation, and the delivery aspect, but being less risky on your on the musculoskeletal sort of strain and muscle damage. So that works really well with the runner that I was speaking about. She does them on the bike, but rowing is perfectly acceptable as well.
I found when I was doing my Ironman training that the HIIT session on the run was a little too much. So I could have done maybe ski erg or rowing HIIT session, but I just dropped that running HIIT session altogether.
How many days a week can we replace that? I mean, is it like twice a week? Is it still better to get at least one day a week of running HIIT to get that specific adaptation, or does it matter?
I mean, context, right? Context is so it
Yeah.
really totally depends. So, for example, with the runner I was speaking about, when she is certainly in like cross country running mode, she's getting she's going to actually do like a 5K race as part of school, and she does that they do that pretty much every week, or have done that through every week through the last few months. So that's the high intensity session for her legs, and there's no other HIIT sessions during the week except on the bike, and everything else is just long slow running, and that's
Hmm.
that works for her. And this is the other problem actually especially with certain athletes that just have so much aerobic power, is that they can just tear their legs off, and if their legs aren't conditioned to being able to do that, they really can damage. So unfortunately, Paul, there's no hard and set kind of rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the other context as well, right? And I learned this from when I was in the New Zealand Olympic program. I was talking to Matthew Walkers, who's like, I think he won the 1500 meters and the 800 meters in the Munich Olympics, I believe. So I was talking to his coach, old man, right? And we were talking about HIIT. And I was basically giving him the lecture that was, in a room you always have to have 2 days of rest between your HIIT sessions, right? And the old man puts up his hand in the classroom, right? And he said, well, with Walker, we did HIIT sessions just about every day. So he had built up the resilience to be able to kind of do that, right? So that we have actually an incredible tool in our disposal now with Athletica. This has never been available before, but if you're using wearables, you'll be able to see that on your workout reserve. So don't let your workout reserve get to below, say, too deep in below zero. And if you do that, that's kind of like the context question. You have that context if you're regularly uploading. So be mindful of that, because remember, the workout reserve is actually monitoring the maximal mean power or maximal mean pace in those high intensity bits, right? Those or bandwidths. So it knows the length of time you've been doing at 1 minute repetitions or 2 minute repetitions or 5 minute repetitions, and so just if you've got the real-time Garmin app, you are so at an advantage relative to others. And just be mindful, like when it starts getting into during your HIIT sessions, down in around 10%, 5% in negative territory. It's like, really be mindful. Yeah, that's enough.
So one of my athletes, Chris Collette, asked a question that goes along with what you just said in a way, and I thought it would be a great question to bring to our discussion. And she was asking, like, well, why should I back off of intervals when I'm already a little fatigued? Why shouldn't I just push through an interval session, even if it's already hard to meet those power targets? What's the physiology and the rationale behind that?
The general question, we're almost looking at the hit your target, walk away, leave two in the tank kind of philosophy versus the no pain, no gain philosophy, right? And we take the leave a couple in the chamber kind of philosophy. That's what we believe with Athletica, and the reason is because we know that consistency, and if I can put my academic hat on, consistency of cell signaling alongside of a balanced nervous system is the key training philosophy that we are in with both HIIT Science and Athletica. And it's just like, it's a targeted training approach. We know that consistency of training, the data is clear. If you are consistently training day in, day out, as much as you can, and hitting those targets, right? You have to imagine your muscle cells, they are cells, and they adapt. The DNA actually will transcribe RNA, which transcribes protein and makes you based on the signal that you are telling it to. So you're in that HIIT session, you're giving it a signal to adapt. And so, and well, then Chris could kind of say, well, then why don't I want to just keep that signal going? And the answer is because, well, you can't. You have a central nervous system that's there to protect you. And if you keep hitting that signal with the no pain, no gain philosophy, you break down the system. The system says, no, 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 I can't do that anymore. And it just, it rebels on us. And we can measure that, of course, in our heart rate variability marker, right? And yeah, it's so that's it. The method of consistently hitting the signaling, right? And specifically of the fast twitch muscle fibers in the heart that's working hard and beating at maximal stroke volume. That signal method of signaling it the maximally is achieved when you put, you leave two in the chamber, you pull back, and you just save a few for the next day. You'll be able to back up more tomorrow and train better if you hold on.
And sometimes, like, the fatigue from HIIT session, it's not like your legs are sore. They're just really like dull. You climb up the stairs and you get like short of breath and you feel like your legs are made of lead. So it's a different kind of fatigue than, say, you did hit heavy weights at the gym. I would argue, though, as a new athlete, it's good to push yourself sometimes till you don't have one or two left. Like just learning how to push yourself, because you will, if you're doing races or if you're planning to do races, you're going to have to push yourself, and you're going to have to need to have that confidence that you can, and it's okay, and you're not going to hurt yourself, right? Because a lot of people, they're used to doing lower intensity steady work and then going to the zone 3 where they feel like, oh yeah, I'm working hard, but they've never pushed themselves till the red zone, right?
Yeah.
And learning to do the red zone correctly without tanking is very useful for a racing situation, because in a race you're going to push yourself more than the norm.
I couldn't agree more. And if you want to learn how to push yourself, make sure that you join, I believe it's Wednesdays, with Marjaana's HIIT session that is taking off. More and more people there these days, and that you'll learn from many others on really how to do a proper HIIT session.
We're having a lot of fun, and we're learning too. Sometimes we share our files, and
Great.
that's always useful to see how different we all are.
Elle, another one of my athletes, asked me if it was okay that if they could split up their long indoor sessions. Like, I think they had a 3 or 4 hour indoor session. It's cold this week in Wisconsin. Does it matter? Is it physiologically okay in terms of adaptations to split it up into 2 workouts? One, taking a half hour or a couple of hours off, maybe a morning and a night. They just have a lot of discomfort in doing long rides. And we've talked about bike fit. We've talked about saddle position and getting a good fit. But is there an adaptation difference between a single 4-hour session and 2 2-hour sessions, for example?
There is a physiological difference in the 4-hour session. You're going to be burning a bit more fat, but from the, back to the signaling discussion, you are like, and also the practical aspect, it's not enough of a difference for it to matter. Two sessions broken as opposed to the one single, there's really not too much of a difference. If you can do two broken as opposed to just doing only the 2 hours, the 2x2 is going to be far superior, right? So that, I think it's just more than acceptable in the context of your situation. So no problem. I would just say, yeah, that's great. Don't sweat it. And also makes a lot of sense from the indoor trainers standpoint. Like that's a lot of time on an indoor saddle, and you don't get the same sort of changes in body position that you do when you're outdoor riding, where you can stand and relieve some pressure for a little bit, or you just so much more easy kind of movement that's in the outdoors. You don't really even think about it, but you're doing it all the time, going back and forth and stuff, right? And you really notice it actually when you're doing prolonged indoor riding. So I started to have enough after about an hour. I know Marjaana can do incredible 4 and 5 hour rides, but she's a maniac.
How did you manage those long rides? I mean, you did 4 and 5 hour rides?
Even 6.5.
Yeah. How did you do it? What did you do? Give us
Just
the
finish
background.
sisu. Just finish sisu. Mental strength. I don't, seriously, I don't know. It's a mystery. It's the willpower, I guess. But I would say it also depends. Like if you're training for an Ironman, you're gonna have to get those long, like,
Yep.
sessions done. But if it's space season, like, why not? If that makes you sit on the indoor bike for 4 hours total, split them up. But if you're training for an Ironman, you're gonna have to get those 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hour sessions in.
Yeah, for sure. And because like principle of specificity, right? You are going to be doing that during your Ironman race. So yeah, not a bad idea to try and tough it out. You probably didn't do 6.5 hours from the get go, right? You
Mm-mm.
probably did some building up to that and did some
Yeah,
progression, Marjaana.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think like my longest in the beginning would be like 2.5, 3 hours, then 4 hours, and then
Yeah.
towards the end they were 5 and 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Are you watching movies? Are you what are you doing?
Podcasts, motivational videos on YouTube, Athletes Compass,
Training Science podcast?
Training Science podcast,
Yeah.
sometimes chatting with Cindy. Maybe we can talk about like splitting 2 long runs. Instead of running like 3 hours, you could run 1 hour, 2 hour, because running is a little bit different, right?
Totally. But remember back to running. In the running context, we know that like the overall training volume of the week is kind of the more important factor than any one long run. We know that quite well. And many people ask us on Athletica, especially when they're either in the triathlon context or the running context, or like, why don't I have a super long run if I'm going to do a marathon, right? And the answer is because we don't focus on that. We don't focus on the long run. We focus on trying to have a strategy to accumulate a certain training volume, the maximal training volume in the week that we can accumulate. And double run days is a tried and true method of doing that. Back to the signaling aspect, right? Think of the signals that your muscles and the various tissues are getting on in that day, right? Imagine if you do a morning run where you get a very strong adaptive signal to make that whole area resilient. Then you're recovering during the day, and then lo and behold, before dinner you go out again and you get another run in, right? And it's like, and you've just like amplified that. You just keep signaling the body to make these aerobic adaptations, these, and all of the the stiffening of the tendons and muscles and fascia and all the various different things. You're telling the body to, no, you are a running beast. And but in the opposite strategy is to just do that one big long 3 hour run. Well, you're killed. And for whatever reason, it's just like, it's not quite as bad. It's more forgiving and absorbing to the body when it's broken. And better for the long haul. Adaptations are better. Just look at the user comments on Athletica, in our forum to realize the number of people that get success with this. And you as well, Marjaana. This is kind of what you did as well.
Yeah.
You said how strong you were running by the end of that Ironman, right? And you never did a crazy. What was maybe 28K was the longest.
28. Yeah,
28K
28
was
was
the
the, yeah.
longest run that you did.
Yeah.
And we've seen your profile in that marathon, and you do nothing but pick up the pace, in the last 5K of that marathon. So it
Yeah.
wasn't for a lack of doing a long run. It was it was quite the opposite. You had energy to give in the end of that race. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did do double runs, and I did like morning runs. It was short with the dog, 5K, but like every day it just adds up. But you're always feeling like you run so much better when you do frequency running instead of
Yeah,
like long runs.
pretty cool.
So that brings me to this last question that I've been getting from several of my athletes about their endurance, aerobic development endurance rides. And they will often, if they're on Zwift, if they're, climbing a hill, they're concerned about getting into zones 3 and 4 during a zone 2 kind of ride. Given that one goal of an endurance ride is to develop a more efficient fat metabolism, what happens when someone jumps into a higher zone, a higher intensity level during an endurance ride? What goes on, and is that okay? Does it change things? I mean, what's the perspective there?
Yeah, you're splitting hairs if you're worried about too much about that. And
Yeah.
yes, you are transitioning into more carbohydrate burning, metabolism, recruiting larger motor units, larger muscle, your bigger muscle fibers, a little bit of your fast twitch muscle fibers. Your heart rate goes up. There's a little bit of, slight increase in your overall, the stressors, but if it's just for a little while, no problem. Like you gotta get over that hill. So don't sweat it, and just know what you're doing. Be mindful of it, and just say to yourself, you know what? As soon as I get to the top of this, I'm just gonna settle back in, and then you do that. But it's like in the big picture of things, if it's a small little bit of zone 3 or 4, or even zone 5, like you can hit those just briefly, no problem. The trouble happens when we naturally drift and hold in zone 3 or 4 for a long time, especially zone 3, because it's so, if you're not mindful and monitoring, you can talk quite easily in zone 3. And the common situation is when the less fit athlete is running with their friend who's a fitter athlete, often females joining male groups, but it's this is there's that drift upwards, and that's when trouble mounts, and it's like you just don't even think about it, and if you're not monitoring, you'll just be completely unaware, but overall you slowly aren't doing your easy training, and you're just always doing hard training, so your central nervous system kind of rebels. It's just stress, and then you get a little bit run down. So but to that question, short little bit, don't sweat it. Splitting hairs, we're carrying, we're getting too anal about all the training. We just kind of, we want to be chill, we want to be relaxed out there, and enjoy our training, and not be overly concerned about these sorts of little things. Just using them as guides.
Yeah, and that's been the advice that I have been giving as well, and trying to convince them that a small hill is a small hill, but maybe don't pick the Zwift Duez, or one of those massive climbs that you're going to be up, so don't pick that on an endurance day.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a route that's like a little bit more simple, less hills, fewer hills. That is all for this week. Thank you for your listener questions. We appreciate your time. Please hand us more questions. Join us next week on the Athletes Compass podcast. Ask your training questions in the comments of this podcast, or on our social media, or on our forum on Athletica. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd appreciate it if you would take a moment to give us a follow and a 5-star review. It would be awesome if you could share this episode with one other person. For more information or to schedule a consultation with Paul, Marjaana, or myself, please check the links in our show notes. For Marjaana Rakai and Dr. Paul Laursen, I am Paul Warloski, and this has been the Athletes Compass podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Athletes Compass podcast, your North Star through the sometimes complicated world of training for your endurance sport. We appreciate your comments and training questions and your 5-star reviews. For a deeper dive into the science of endurance sports, listen to the Training Science podcast and check out the adaptive AI training platform Athletica.ai. Thanks for listening.